and we would manage PR marketing. Oops.
Oh, wow.
It's okay.
Do you know the car braked by itself? That was
Yeah,
like insanely
that's
impressive.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Whoa. Okay, technology literally just saved like a lot of money there, and a pretty big problem.
So
Wow.
we basically,
Anyways,
yeah.
hey Masha, how
Hi.
are you?
Great. You?
Good to see you again. It's only been, 24 hours?
Almost.
Last time we were driving down to Jack's birthday in Menlo Park. That was a good time.
It was fun.
Yeah. Let's just go there. How things been? I have not been to your house in a decent bit of time. Any new art that you've gotten?
No.
No new art? I'm surprised.
Yeah, not yet. It's a very
Anything
high season for VCs.
Oh,
I feel like
interesting.
things will wrap in the next 2-3 weeks, and everyone is just trying to bring this out to the finish line.
Have you always been so interested in art?
I do like art. I think it just my interest like spiked maybe 5 years ago when I spent some time in Europe during COVID. But I always loved art. But I think it's just deepened in the last 5 years.
Gotcha. What have you learned that we could potentially apply to the tech industry?
I think like traditionally technology is good with inventing things, but artists are the best in coming up with use cases. And this is why people like Steve Jobs collaborated with artists. He was really close with Keith Haring, Yoko Ono, John Lennon. He would like show first version of laptops to them. I think technologists can get inspired from artists by amount of use cases and ways how the technology could be used, and just like by overall creative process. And
I
there's
agree.
a lot of reference and back in history from like having Bell Labs, and it's not a new theme trying to bring art and technology together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a theme that's not new, but is increasingly important and continues to get more important. But I know your original background was actually in science as well, so that intersection does make a lot of sense for you. Can you talk me through the early days of you studying and everything you did with physics?
Well, I did study all kind of science. When I was a child, I was winning a bunch of regional and countrywide Olympiads and all sorts of things. I think at some point I actually got much closer to social science, and where I continued. But one of my first jobs was working with my first and only boss at that time, Serge Bell, on quantum tech. And it was very exciting, and I think quantum tech is still remains exciting, but it literally was my first job in tech, just working for quantum physicists.
That's a pretty intense
And
first job.
coming back to my dad being space engineer who turned into a finance person, so it does have something with the way how I was growing up.
Okay, space engineer plus finance guy means it's in your blood to be doing what you're doing. That's pretty cool. You landed that first job on Twitter, right?
I did have I was TV host and I was activist, and when I was wrapped with that, I had my first company in the beginning, which was a social media agency at the rise of social media, when things like Facebook and Twitter just been created, and lots of companies and personalities didn't know how to use them. And my very first company was like more than 90 people in less than a year. And then on Twitter, I met this entrepreneur, Serge Bell, who started more than 20 companies. It was 2010, and 3 of them already went over $1 billion in value, which was really a lot for the time. We probably overall had less than like 200 unicorns, and he was founder of 3 of them, and all of them he bootstrapped to the first 100 million in revenue, which is also amazing and very rare even nowadays. And I was just lucky to meet him at the age of 20, and he assigned me PR work for his quantum projects, and then for his venture capital fund. And I didn't know if I'm good in PR. He kind of told me I'm good in PR, and I started working with that. But in reality, I spent a few years kind of next to very successful founder and just saw everything he would say.
there's not a lot of people in this industry that have a good grip on PR and narrative and really bridging that gap between the tech world and the rest of society. You started a 90-person plus PR agency that you then exited to build Day One Ventures.
So it was a social media agency. Then I worked for someone like at his quantum tech centers, then at his VC fund. Then I was 23, 24 when I became VP of comms at large data protection company. And then I had PR studio, which I built to 8 figures revenue in less than 3 years with crazy, like over 70% margin, which I end up exiting to focus on investing.
Impressive. So how did you decide you wanted to start investing in startups?
I worked for someone like until 2013. And in 2013, when I left Sergio's company, I was thinking which company would I join and why. And I got lots of offers from a bunch of tech companies to lead their comms. And I honestly wasn't meeting anyone as talented, as intense as my previous boss. I was like, why don't I start consulting for you? And we see how it goes. And maybe at some point I join full time. So I end up doing PR consultancy. And at some point, Business Insider put me in like top PR people in tech list. And I wrote some articles about PR that went viral. So one thing after another, I started getting like 100, 200 companies every month for my PR services. And we were a very small team, maybe like at peak 5, 7 people max. And so I had to focus on few amount of companies. And before I worked at VC fund where I invested in companies like ClassPass. So I was like, kind of like had a sense how to apply my previous knowledge and experience in the fund. And I started picking less and less companies.
That reminds me of when the big tech world was firing so many people and everyone was sort of panicking. And you launched this initiative called Funded Not Fired, where you were giving $100,000 to people who had recently been laid off to start companies, and that went super viral. Can you tell me about how you came up with that?
I think it's always like about questions like why. So when I was like working with all these companies on PR side, I just ended up picking like ones that became very successful. That brought me like to understanding, well, PR could be, I just want to I just want to have more stake in these companies, but at the same time, while PR could be most efficient at a very early stage, it's exactly the stage when PR is so inaccessible, and your incentives with PR agencies are very misaligned, because essentially PR agents get paid for time, and then afterwards, like founders only get exit to the end. So it just felt like very misaligned in terms of risk being taken. But coming back to the Funded Not Fired, it was just like being able to answer question why. It was just like very timely. And I recalled like some personal stories, and I was like, whoa, there are like hundreds of people that are being laid off from Stripe and Twitter, and very often laid off because, for example, when a big business running, it's not always the worst workers. Sometimes it's a new product, and then crisis, it's just like less money on the market. So company has to focus on all the products versus more innovative ones. Or, for example, big company would acquire a new company, and it would be small, scrappy, fairly smart team join, and then they would be laid off because this new function is not up to date anymore. So I was like, well, in the past, when you see someone leaving Twitter or Stripe, you go to them, you figure out what they're going to do. Maybe they start companies. So why would they look for a new job if they can launch the idea?
100%.
Big success. We launched it, I think, in
VC's ears perk up the second.
We got like 2,000 applicants, and then we had like 4 steps process. And at the end, I believe we filtered around we tried to find 10, but we found 7 companies.
Cool.
Actually, 5 of them still running and showing some, I think out of 5, 4 raised more money and new rounds, even Series A. So hopefully some of this initiative will work out, but I think it's always how you perceive any life circumstance, and it's very often an invitation to do something bigger.
It's
all about
great way of just dealing with that crisis.
Yeah.
I know most VCs tend to take the approach where they wait till something's hot and then they all pile in. So I think it's really cool that you decided to invest in people literally when they were arguably
I
at like
think
a low in their
we
career.
invest in high potential people and companies and make them hot. I love saying like that we make the world fall in love with what our founders been built. I think part of the reason is definitely like it's like very personal mission. I think one of traits that I personally have is I see people in a way in pink glasses, and I see them like more exciting and bigger than they are, almost like projection. And I see people this way, and I just want to show the rest of the world why they're so amazing. And I put this in words. I just recognize some qualities about them and the way they operate that different. And I put it different words and better words. And sometimes I use a lot. I work with amazing photographers. I always like want to make sure a company we represent not always sound amazing, but also feel and look amazing. So it's very often some founders that we start working with kind of look slightly different in a few weeks and actually like more exciting. But then what happened is as you see articles about you, you start being bought in your vision more. You just had all this fantasy in your life and very few people believed in this. And then it's just like a validation that the world also see it this way. And the next thing I do is someone who's very stubborn. I just keep founders pulled into this bigger, brighter, amazing vision of themselves, and just kind of hold them there. So I do think lots of value of PR is not just it's not just like publications where like customers and partners and investors and recruits find you. It's also that you see yourself kind of bigger. You get excited about it. You believe in this more. And it's a big psychological effect, kind of like being more bought into this vision. But then one of the sweetest things that happens with us all the time when company get first publication, right? And there is a publication, and then Wall Street Journal write it, and there is a print, and the parents would just print this out and put on the wall. So I feel in some ways very big launch and splash. It's a big commitment.
Yes.
When you tell rest of the world that you committed to do this, which I also think has a
lot of times, I mean, to your point on like
founders and their
parents,
teams.
I think that's a lot of times for parents, that's like the first thing that actually feels real to them. They're not really going to think about
like
what's your MRR or whatever.
Yeah. Like Wall Street Journal or Forbes or New York Times wrote about you.
So it is a big special moment for a lot of founders to have that sort of.
But it's like also balance, not first of all finding ambitious enough people so they don't feel like they made it after such publication, and also like they have to want more, right? And genuinely, I feel like the first splash that you get as a company, as you present a very new vision, is very big. But how can you keep momentum happening to you? And I think in the past, we would live in the time when you have to create big momentum, like once a year, twice a year. I feel like we're getting in there in tech, in the zone when you have to keep momentum all the freaking time. You have to like, in every single day, find something that happened and create something that happened and keep momentum running.
Yeah, completely agreed. And the other thing is, you can't just say, oh, we raised $10 million or $20 million and that be the headline, because people are raising all the time.
I have amazing PR team working with me, and I'm being very strict, and I'm being very annoying about, like, we really try to avoid as much as we can these headlines like company raised. I do really think the headline should be about how company is changing the world and what they're building, but not about amounts raised, because we've seen so many of this announcement, and fundraise itself is like a sign that something is happening, but it's not accomplishment itself. So we're actually trying to make sure as much as we can with that it's actually about essence, not about the race.
No, I completely agree with that. And saying how much a company's raised doesn't really do much to really explain what the purpose of the company is. I love what you're saying about photography and making sure that founders are sort of photographed not just in the best light, but also in a way that like represents them
Yeah,
the best.
sometimes I do them haircut. I have couple founders. I have my hairdresser in Paris, and I have couple founders who I literally took with me to Paris to make some proper haircut, because I do think it influences shareholder value.
It does.
Founders never try to think about it themselves. So, but speaking about photography, it's just I like aesthetics and I like beauty, and I think beauty is very convincing. And I think it's kind of like another tool. It's definitely underutilized in tech. It's much more utilized in fashion and luxury and other fields of business. And it's kind of, I just enjoy, and I enjoy finding new photographers who would make like the best job making founders look like making the soul
Yeah.
be seen through the picture.
I think fashion matters in any field where you have high visibility, and traditionally that has been, you know, actors and politicians, but increasingly I think people in the technology industry are more and more visible, and so what they wear actually does say something, and there's an opportunity there.
But I never ever make it time consuming by any means, and I'm always trying to make it like as effortless as easy for founders that we work with.
Okay, so I know that most VCs say that they support founders and hashtag let me know how I can be helpful, but from the stories I've heard from some mutual friends and founders you've invested in, you really go deep with the founders that you back. Can you tell me a story? You don't have to name names of some of the stuff that you've done for founders in the early days.
I think it's like so different, right? And it's ranging from helping with PR and shaping the narrative and making the story look more genuine. And I think it takes as much as just having a good conversation and picking all these pieces so what they're creating right now makes sense. But it's been all kind of scenarios, right? Not to like, it was like few episodes when founders were like okay, not because of company, but would have like really hard personal time and would be like, should I even keep living, right? To the question when founders need to make big decisions about board, about keeping co-founder, and I do love to touch any questions that's related to people questions. I'm most curious about humans. I think there are lots of investors here that are curious about technology, and while I love technology, I think my specialty is people. So I think founders I work with, they know that they would come to me with any questions related to figuring out personal relationship with other people when it comes to other investors, co-founders, team, executives, when it comes to their life partners. I think that's kind of like a core.
Where do you think you developed that skill?
I think it's just trying kind of to fix myself because it's always been intense to exist in this vessel. So I just kept finding all sorts of tools that would help me understand myself more.
Are there any tools that you found particular? Whoa, my bad.
I think I really benefited a lot from, for example, Vipassana, which is silent meditation retreat, and signed up a bunch of people into this one. I've been a big fan of psychoanalysis that I've been doing for like 5 years, and that's been exciting. I did have different, I had at one point a teacher who was teaching me truth. I went to a bunch of sexual energy retreat. I got kicked from tantra retreat. I went down the rabbit hole.
Wait, pause. How did you get kicked from a tantra retreat?
I was just lacking logic a little bit. But basically we're it was you don't have to do exercise if you not feeling connection or don't enjoy other people. And I'm very picky as an investor, obviously. but at the same time, so you don't have to do like charity, right? So it's like when you like in exercise connect with someone you don't want to connect, but at the same time you have to keep doing exercise. And I just didn't want to do particular exercises with particular people, so they kicked me out. Okay, that's fine. That's fine for now.
Yeah, that's so funny. I'll definitely ask more on that later. But has this been a pattern of like rebellion? Have you always just kind of rejected things, or was this like a one-off event?
Yeah, I think I had like excellent grades, but outside of it wasn't like easiest child to handle, let's put it this way. I'm also like not really good with rules, especially with rules established by someone else. Not very good with agency. It was only like 3 years of my life when I had a boss, and I genuinely cannot imagine to ever work for anyone. Things like that.
Yeah, I know you work super hard and I've seen it, but I really can't imagine you working for someone. You're too agentic, I think.
It feels like a play, right? It just doesn't feel. I kind of like work for all my founders, but never like full time, right? It's always like by choice.
Have there been any interesting people that you've met along the way that you've learned a lot from?
Oh, plenty. Always meeting every day.
I know you hung out a bit with Stephen Hawking, which is a crazy.
I hang out with his friend, but Stephen and I knew a lot about each other.
Gotcha. What was that like, and how did you end up in these like hyper scientific circles?
I met his long-term collaborator, Andrew Strominger, who is he's actually was working with Steve on string theory, and he would look for the ways to put information in the black hole, and he would study black holes. And I met him in like one of salons, and we reconnected, and we would have like very deep conversations. And I would say almost every single person in San Francisco I'm friends with is someone I work with. It just keeps happening this way. But outside of it, outside of tech, all my friends are scientists. And some of them like work on consciousness, and some of them work on like things related to astronomy and space and psychology, but have extensive circle of friends that are scientists, which is probably the only people I'm not working with. We kind of like more playing muse to each other.
I remember when you were asking me to put you in touch with someone, you were saying, they need to be a physicist. I need to just meet with physicists.
Yeah.
You're like, it's fine. They just need to be a scientist, but ideally physicists. And I found that super interesting.
I reflected back and remembered like my most fruitful and easy and inspiring working relationships. And remembered that like my dad is a physicist, and just like he's like space engineer, and it's just probably the way how I grew up around someone's very sciencey and very structured brain. Then my first and only boss was physicist. My right hand for like a number of years was physicist. So
there's also one more physicist that you invested in. Alex Blania is a physicist.
Yeah,
right?
Alex Blania is a physicist, and quantum physicist who's used in school in Max Planck, and then in Caltech he would use AI to manage quantum systems, and that's what he was doing when I met him in DMs on Instagram.
Oh, that's amazing. You just like DM'd Sam Altman's co-founder.
No, he was like he DM'd me.
Okay, even better.
And it was very funny. I had this like bot that like random posts on Instagram, because at that time I felt like having some presence on this platform would be beneficial. I would go sketchy pathway, buying followers, but I was like, if I would install this small bot that's liking randomly people's pictures, and maybe some of them like my pictures, they would just follow me. And my bot found Alex, and I got the DMs that I'm a student of Max Planck. I applied in something related to IC. Something didn't go through, but I'm ready to grab a coffee anywhere in the world. And it sounded very nice. and very open. And he also mentioned that he's quantum scientist that use AI to manage quantum systems. So it was like a few keywords that just clicked, and AI and quantum caught my interest. I had a call and asked Alex what he wants. He said that he wants to be Silicon Valley founder. And when I asked, well, why Silicon Valley founder? What do you like about Silicon Valley? He said, well, I've actually never been. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, just come, and you could come. And he came. He stayed in my guest room for the first time. He never been in the US before. He was 24. It was really exciting. We instantly became friends and tried to brainstorm what could be a good thing for him to start. Had all sorts of ideas. I remember how I was like looking back at different entrepreneurs like PayPal Mafia who started with payments and finance, and one thing after another, he met Max and he met Sam, and he joined WorldCoin as CTO, then first a co-founder, and then first a CEO and main leader of the project. And that was like a fun ride.
Wow.
It's still my biggest in financial way investment, where fairly small check ended up being a lot of capital. I'm still staying in WorldCoin, not selling my tokens, and that would remain like that for a while.
Well, if you ever wanna sell some, I'm down to buy a little bit. Well, a little bit being an actual little bit. I would not be able to afford that full position. But yeah, I actually remember I met Alex at Burning Man, and didn't know him at the time. Obviously, it was like the last day of the burn. Everyone was like super open-minded. We were having a really good time, but I could just tell that he was a scientist or engineer. Just like knew it immediately. Maybe it's because my dad is an engineer. And you could just feel that he was sharp.
But I love engineers and physicists and scientists because I feel like their very structured, systematic brain allow me to be in my most chaotic and creative self. Because when it's not physicist, I feel like I need to go back and forth between being chaotic, creative, and logical. And I'm kind of like neither. And when someone is like very sciencey and very structured, I could just be like fully myself. And I do think like being creative and being chaotic and spontaneous is my strengths, where lots of things came through. And it's probably why I vibe so well with anyone who has background with science.
Again, it's that same thing we were talking about in the beginning of art and science, structure and chaos, and combining those two things can lead to
like plain
magical
artist.
But so talk me through a little bit about your interest in art. So you initially got interested in that. You're incorporating it in some way into your founder portfolio in the PR sense. When founders visit your art gallery, what do you talk to them about, and how do you make them interested in something that's so far out of their typical scope of interest?
Well, I think it's always like first it's just happened to me that my previous romantic partner, he comes from like artistic family, and I spent most of COVID in their family house, and they had 5 family estates. His grandmother was very like renowned female artist that exhibited in MoMA, Met, Guggenheim, Pompidou, and when I connected with his family, they would just very often like compare me with this artist, and it was really interesting. And I think through her work, art like touched my heart on a deeper levels, and then it started coming up in my life and continued with me hosting some art exhibitions for my portfolio companies. We took shoe company, we took artists, we make artists paint new shoe and sell their paintings in the office of this company, which was a beautiful spot in Brooklyn. Then it continued with us creating space for Super Rare. Then it continued with me doing a quite big show called Artificial Imagination. When OpenAI just launched OpenAI DALL-E, I basically was thinking, well, it's never been that DALL-E or AI created art been exhibited in gallery space. I want to host the first ever exhibition, AI art exhibition in a physical space. And my birthday was coming up, so I turned my birthday into this event. And it was like 450 people. We co-created it together with OpenAI team. It was a big splash and really,
this was
really
right when
inspiring
Dolly
event.
was
It was
had
just like when
just been
DALL-E was just
released.
launched, and one of artists, Alex Rabin, who we found and put in this exhibit, became OpenAI's artist in residence. After that, he got New York Times review, he got MoMA show, he got just, it's like totally took off his career as artist, which was also rewarding because we don't want to use artist sound on the sake of tech. We want artists to take our technologies, get inspired, and help, most important, technologies of our time become part of the culture, because without that, we would not be able to find mass adoption for some of the most critical technologies that's being created here. At the same time, I think artists are searching and very curious, and they need this inspiration. So I love when I can just bridge both worlds. I think lots of technologies, when you mention art, say, I like art. No, like, I don't care about art, right? And what proves, it proves to be wrong. There are a few ways how artists and technologists connecting. I think it's like usually three ways. One is like, sometimes like technologists get really excited about like medium and technologies that artists been using, and they would like try in a very geeky way start finding out about the ways how artists created this work, and that would connect with them. Sometimes it has to do with just personal connection, right? It's sometimes like artists and technologists, they hit it off, they went to similar schools, they lived in the same cities, they both have two sons. Something personal would catch it, and through personal interest to artists, it would be interest to technology. I do love one story that has to do with my ex-partner grandfather, Carl Bucher. He was close with Oppenheimer brothers, and that was kind of their family story when Carl created this special material that
you and physicists.
Yeah, it was basically like they created this special material and put it in LACMA, and when you jump in front of this painting covered with layers of this material, the image stays for a few seconds. And Oppenheimer brothers came to LACMA to Carl Bucher's show, saw it, that reminded them Hiroshima, it really touched them. They connected with Carl, they became close friends, they hosted his exhibit in Los Alamos. So this family story also, like,
this is LACMA, the art gallery in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, family stories that I've heard also inspired me to think about how artists and technologists can collaborate more. And when Carl Bucher and Oppenheimer brothers created,
LACMA, I think, is collaborates with SpaceX and potentially not NASA as well, and they have this specific sort of like program which is specifically the intersection of art and
actually
science.
didn't know about this.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's interesting to hear. But it's just been keep going, right? And best example is Renaissance, when and people who would be like, there is a definition of Renaissance man. It's just like someone who touches the entire spectrum of knowledge and capacity, right?
Yeah.
And I do think it could be very fulfilling to think about it this way, but at the same time, I feel like amount of powerful technologies we're creating that would really benefit humanity is so much faster than adoption. And I think if you're creating company changing the world, capital is accessible, talent is accessible, you have a vision. And the biggest bottleneck for you as a founder is to convince society that it's a good thing. And even my own experience working with companies like World, formerly WorldCoin, or Orchid, which is embryo selection company. I do have exciting company portfolio called Valor. I have exciting company portfolio called Rainmaker. That's literally creating, doing weather modification, creating
Shout
rains.
out Augustus.
When you get into detail of these companies, they're doing amazing things, and we all need it. At the same time, people just, not all people necessarily like it. And I do think the pathway is to make sure that these companies' creations will become part of the culture and people start understanding value of it. And while historically our firm would always work with media, and basically invest in company and do exciting, positive media coverage for this company. I do think sliding and adding to this very rational way of promoting technologies, like more emotional way, will help us to facilitate mass adoption of the most important technologies of our time.
Okay, so you invested in two really interesting companies, Orchid and Valor. One is working on embryo selection, and the other is working on nuclear power. These are obviously industries with a lot of sort of psychological weight and things to think about there. How do you think about these companies and what they're doing?
Orchid, I was like proudly invested super early in 2019, and it just made sense. I haven't thought about this idea, but I do think parents make so many decisions for their kids, but while not having ways and tools to influence most important decisions like health, right? That really influences every single day of the future life. And on the one hand, there are lots of cases when there are like disease and chronic disease passing generation to generation through genes, and there are also lots of dangerous disease that you could track on a very early stage, right? And there is like situation when you get mistaken chromosomes and women end up going through abortion, and that's like also very unfair while it's something that could have been tracked very early on. That comes together with a trend of people having children later in life. And due to that, if I'm not mistaken, in US, like 1 out of 10 kids appear through IVF, right? And while you're already doing IVF, why would you not make sure that your future child have the best health possible? So what Orchid does, they look at genomic code of human embryo. They read it like 99.9%, more than any other company or group ever existed before. And they tell you health preconditions, and it helps to prevent some mistakes, like mistakes in chromosomes. It helps prevent some chronic disease. You can have a range of and the variation of like how high is the chance this particular child would have particular type of cancer, for example. I think it's very important that parents have choice. I absolutely do not mind like natural way conceiving children. However, I do think that in the future, majority of the kids will be born with a little bit more attention to the health of the child and to the genomics. I think it's really essential for cases when couple has some chronic disease running in generation. I do see no reasons of avoiding doing this. If you already go through IVF, why would you not do the check? I do think it's much better for women because in so many cases and very early stages they test and something is wrong and they have to go through like painful procedure and just get rid of embryo, right? Things like that. But I do think it would be like a very common way and one of the basic procedures people would go as they're planning family.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think things like this are important to sort of communicate how they help people. And again, back to the PR component of what you do, it's not just PR for the sake of making things look better, but also getting people educated on what technologies are out there or being created that can meaningfully impact their lives and their future kids' lives in ways that are permanent. And I think this is really important.
And it's like just very often that health of a child becomes the center of the life of their parents, which is also like sometimes like very unfair because if child has a very hard chronic syndrome, it might end up that entire life of their parents will evolve around supporting this child. There are like bunch of disease that comes from particular mistaken chromosome, and it would be like such a nuanced, small but meaningful mistake that it's probably like 200 people in the world who has disease like that. So it's just not enough data to come up with treatment and to test such treatment. So pre-screening it is the only way to avoid this terrible disease.
Yeah.
So I do think having such optionality is very important, and it's obviously unfair with like lots of people being like angry with solution like that, and or kind of like almost protesting against other people being able to have optionality and access to technologies like that, which was very unfair. But I don't think you could work with that only through narrative and media and rational. I do think you have to access people's like hearts as much as you try to access mine. And doing both is something that can bring shift, and at the end of the day will help us to evolve as humanity.
For someone that invests so much into technology, one of the things I know about you is that you don't really use your laptop that much or do that many Zoom calls. I don't think I've ever seen you hold a laptop. Do you even have a laptop?
There is one. I'm not a big user of laptop. Spend most of the time with people. I definitely check technologies we use, but I really love to do deep dive on the way how this particular human code came together and what happened to that. I think this is almost like universal. I think there's a very good way to learn about humans. I like to say like this tiny bit of information you get about yourself, and as you realizing who you are, it helps you realize so much more about other people who are in your life. And I'm fascinated with humans. I'm constantly getting inspired by humans. I do love just in different like chapters of my life, just connecting with people and really understanding them deeply, and very often hear from people, well, through kind of like talking to you, and I haven't been understanding myself and about myself as much as through talking with you and connecting with you, which is really something like very rewarding to hear. And I do love to serve people and especially founders in this way.
What are things that you...
So it feels like pulling my attention to laptops back from humans. It feels like I'm robbing their chances to know to get to know themselves and to find out something about themselves.
How do you think that helps you as a founder?
Like getting to know other people?
Getting to know yourself.
I feel like being a founder is just like constant. You constantly reinvent yourself. You get some insights and you let them go through making these insights part and pieces of what you're creating in the company. And then you're regaining new ones. I think one huge differentiator of all great founders that I know, and also my, that just like the thrive for constant change. No matter how great things are, the best founders would always change. And this like desperate desire for change, that's not comfortable, it's not convenient, it's not what all people do. And I think great founders also known by through change becoming more themselves. And this is also what our PR work is doing, is just kind of like looking at person and seeing like what adjustments could be made so this person became more themselves.
Interesting. It's almost like one of the things I learned in LA is that the equivalents of VCs there are like agents, or like the equivalent of A16Z would be CAA. I later learned that CAA and A16Z actually collaborated together, and CAA helped Andreessen in their earliest funds. But in some sense, you're like an agent for an artist or actor or something like that. Have you ever considered working in Hollywood or doing anything in the entertainment industry?
Not really. I just like founders. I just so much surrounded by founders. I don't even know if it's just so interesting for me, right? It's like all my best friends founders. It's kind of like I feel like most interesting and talented and craziest people of our time become founders. It's like a chapter like that. They don't go into any other fields. I do have a firm belief that on the one hand, humanity could be instinct, and we shouldn't be taking for granted that the lives that we have. I don't think we would always exist by definition as species. We know about a bunch of species that went extinct. And I do think making sure this music continues is very important. And I can't imagine, like, why else would you use technology? Why else would you create technology? But at the same time, I think world is like full of pressing issues, and they're changing. And systems that we created in the past, like overall, like political system, is more focused on sustaining itself than they're solving modern problems. So I do believe that the tech founders have the best chance of saving the world, not governments, not non-profits, not anyone. And I do think in this case, artists is like collaborators and assistants that can help founders to help with the solutions. And in reality, we need their help. And in reality, it's something that could probably be most meaningful way for artists to spend their time.
So I do completely agree with the fact that technology can have a massive impact on humanity and solve some of its most pressing problems. This is why I decided to be a part of the technology industry. But the average person looking at Silicon Valley would say that the tech billionaire is the modern day villain. Do you think there might be anything to that, and why do you think this perception is
I think
the case?
part of that is just like resources and power that tech billionaires would have access to. I think it's kind of like ongoing theme that most of societies don't like people who are very wealthy or very powerful, right? It also happened that technology enabled lots of these people become very successful in a very short period of time. So I think every time when a normal person look at someone who becomes successful almost overnight, it almost feels like it's been so easy. But as someone who's been on another side and going through, with my founders, going through like very tough times, I do understand at what cost this creation happens and how much sacrifice to all other parts of life they need to make in order to keep doing what they do. And it's probably the most intense is the most rewarding, I think, life experience to become entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs best artists of our time, but at the same time it's the most intense life experience, right? That you can put yourself through, because this demand for constant change, where you need to keep up with technological development of the world and facing the hardest competition of the smartest people on earth around you, which fighting for the same resources as you do. It's not a journey like you'd be envious of if you observed it as close.
I would agree with that.
As you do. And in many ways, I do think life of investor is easier, right? There's like a lot of responsibility
100%.
and it has its own element of hustle, but I don't think like I work as hard as any of my founders who literally sometimes like for weeks sleep in the office, wake up, go back to coding, and have to like break through so many issues, so much bias, and so many challenges to bring to the world what they're bringing.
I think
it's full dedication. You really cannot have, if you're building really big company, changing the world, there's just like nothing else left in your life. Just a little bit tiny room for a very supportive family, but this is it.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think founders get their support from the communities that they've created outside of families, whether it be their co-founders or their investors, and I'd say it's at least on like a weekly basis, if not every other week. That
I had a very recent pitch call with a founder, and I asked a founder, what's where you going to be like a year from now? He said, me or a company? And it was immediate a sign to me that I was like, how can I, like, best founders I backed, they wouldn't draw the separation line, me or a company, right? It's just like, what do you even mean, right? If someone asks me like me or my father, it's just like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I wouldn't even think, oh, I want to move in from this house to that house and I'll be on vacation on the boat. It's just like, what would I tell, right? Obviously, I will be speaking like where I see my company.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think
You literally like see yourself as this like nurturing force for your creation. And you just like play this function. You make sure this is blossoming and you keeping it alive, you keeping it developing, right?
and people can push back on this and say, "Oh, you're not your company," and have work-life balance. And no
No, I
matter how
think
many times you say
I think
that, the best founders always
it's
just end
became
up
very
being their
popular to
company.
be a founder, and I think it's also like same as like other fancy careers like acting or modeling, right? Just becomes like really popular at certain period of time. Right now, being founder is very popular, but creating something great and purely novel requires so much sacrifice to all other parts of life, and I haven't seen a single company that's been created otherwise. I think haven't met a single like multi-billion companies. I was lucky to invest in 11 on seed stage as of right now, right? Haven't seen a single one where founders would have like boss weekends and don't work at least like 80, 90 hours a week,
Yeah,
usually longer. Hasn't seen a single story like that, right? So it's obviously misleading, saying that you could have 5 hobbies and then also build company and company going to be gigantic.
yeah, it's a lot of work, and even if you do all the work and do everything right, you're still not guaranteed to be successful. So, um,
That's true.
yeah, have deep respect for the people that have made that sacrifice. And I think it's really important as investors to understand that even though we have like strong financial incentives in these companies succeeding, it's important to remember that like the companies, especially the early stages, like are the founders, and that there's more to their success than just like the company metrics. Things like helping founders learn more about themselves, helping founders through like personal crises, all of these things actually, selfishly speaking, end up impacting your financial returns as an investor.
For sure. I think it's always, I try to always stay on founder side. And I do believe that I beckon people for whom building company is like their life journey. So I always like stay on founder side, just making sure founders is great. And while I do care about returns and been trusted by lots of money by our LPs, I also would never like choose like financial interest over like founder.
I
It's
don't think there is a way to choose financial interests over founders in the long run. Reputation, like reputation in this industry is like everyone knows your reputation so fast. It's kind of crazy. It's just such a small industry. You moved to the US when you were like 23, 24, all alone. What was that like? I mean, that's a pretty
I
wild
kind of like
experience.
didn't notice how I moved because my former boss needed help with his cybersecurity company. It was a big company, had physical offices in 33 countries. Kind of overnight, he had to come back rescued. And I was one of 3 execs who joined together with him. I had no corporate experience, so that was very intense. But at that year, I literally moved in Boston, but then I would be on the plane. My team would be physically in 15 countries, and we would manage PR marketing. Oops,
Oh, wow.
it's okay.
Do you know the car braked by itself? That was
Yeah,
like insanely
that's okay.
impressive.
Yeah, that's cool.
Whoa. Okay, technology literally just saved like a lot of money there, and a pretty big problem.
So
Wow.
we basically,
Anyways,
yeah. So I was like kind of like in between many countries, time zones. But then I moved to US and I didn't love Boston as much. So after stepping off from this cybersecurity company, Acronis, I moved to New York, and I love New York. And it was crazy experience. It was like ups and downs, but I knew 3 persons in New York, kind of like didn't speak, still don't, very good English, but in first 7 months, I made first million in revenue, which was,
Awesome.
I was just like working all the time. I was like, I remember I did this like, would wake up at 5 a.m. I would do this like 7-minute workout. I was obsessed with getting very skinny at the time and probably got like to 90 pounds or something. I would eat like tiny oat milk and then salad without oil. It was like really very like just very ruthless lifestyle, and it was fun. But then it was like also full of up
Where
and
was
downs.
this?
I got this like I was like doing my visa. It was New York. I was doing my visa. I got this while doing the visa. I got this roommate, and while visa was in production, we would like put a lease on her, and she's like, "Oh, like you have to pay in cash for entire year ahead of time." And I obviously had already savings. I brought like lots of cash. I paid it ahead of time. He's like, "I can't pay now. I have a startup, but you should pay." I was like, "Sure." I was like very trusting, right? And like one time I'm coming back home and I'm like getting in my apartment and I'm not being let in. So apparently person I trusted to be my roommate, kicked me out, and I had no rights for this apartment, and I already paid for entire year, so I couldn't even. Good news, she put my bags out. So good news, I could at least get my bags, right? But it was just like experiences like that. That was disappointing, but every time after like immigration experience, which is as disappointing, then I found other roommates which were like super far away in Brooklyn, and they were just sweetest people ever, and it was like a tiniest. It was like very strange because I lived in this like tiny 1 meter, tiniest, shittiest bedroom ever. It was like barely like window-ish, where it was a bed and mirror, and that's it.
In New
And
York, you can buy that
like
for only a few million.
I was like a monk. I was renting it for like few $100. And at the same time, I was already like making millions, but I had so much fear over being able to stay in this country that I already called home and needing to save up as much as I can, to the extent that if there is like $18 salad and there is $16, I would go for $16 just because it's $2 cheaper while already making millions, right? So it was like super unbalanced in this sense, but it kind of like once like you go through this yourself, you actually see which founders are scrappy and not.
Yes.
And I do think it's important to be adjusting based on the stage you're at. And if you a founder and you raise big round and you're sitting down and I don't know, like trying to find like plane tickets at $100 better, it probably makes no sense. But it has to go step by step.
Yeah.
But kind of had to go through experience starting something on my own in a very young age. And it was really interesting, but I don't regret any of this experience. And in so many ways, I got lucky with people I met who enabled me to do what I do and learned. And even raising like first fund, I think I was 26, didn't go to school in Stanford, didn't work for Meta, I worked for VC firm, not like tier 1 VC firm, right? Neither of that was on my bio. And I was like 26 at that time. I did make successful angel investment, but then I was like, how crazy were LPs of my first fund to trust me so much money? And I raised like
crazy enough to make good returns.
20 mil fund, like, but I never raised money before. How did I even raise it, right? This is like all kind of miracles in a good way. So,
well, you have made a tremendous amount of progress. I guess before I almost crash this again, I will drop you off. But Masha, it really has been such a pleasure, and yeah, look forward to seeing some new art soon. Let me know when you get some new paintings.
Thank you. It was
See you,
fun.
Masha.
Thank you so much.